Hey guys, Pierre here from Into Fly Fishing, and welcome to another fly tying tutorial. In the vise today we've got the popular Prince Nymph. It's been around for some time and is a great mayfly imitation. This fly tying tutorial is brought to you by Vixen. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check the links in the video description for a full review on their new fly fishing waste pack. It has a removable foam sleeve so that you can store this fly and others that you'll learn to tie safely while you're out on the river. Once you've slipped the bead over the hook, place the hook into the vise and secure it in place, making sure that the hook shank is level and that the barb area of the hook and the point is exposed. Also test to make sure that the hook is secured properly to prevent headaches later. Now I'm going to attach the thread. In the bobbin I've got UTC 70 denier in red, and I'm just going to attach it behind the bead. If you're using a smaller bead or a brass bead and you want to add more weight, you can always do so by adding some lead wire thread wraps behind the bead. That will also help to beef up the thorax section of the fly. Now, to prevent the bead from running around, I'm just going to build a little thread dam behind it, just like so. Run my thread back and I open the thread. It's very important to open the thread to make sure that your thread lays very flat, otherwise there's no use of using flat thread. And then with touching turns you go back until you reach the start of the bend, and you know you're in the right spot when the the thread intercepts the barb of the hook if you're using a barbed hook. Leave the thread hanging there. Now I take brown turkey bites and I cut 2 of the bites from the feather. You'll notice that this turkey bite is a natural tendency to face downward, so you place them back to back so that they splay apart. I'm going to show you now. They splay apart like that. Make sure that the tips are aligned and measure them to be about 3/4 of this total hook shank. A full hook shank length would be too much, so I do about 3/4 to half, depending on which hook you use. It's all about proportion and knowing how the fly should look. The tips aren't aligned properly, so I'm just going to move them around a little bit. That's it. And then you place the bites on the side of the shank, on the opposite sides of the shank. You pinch it in place. Then you place the bites on the opposite side of the shank and you pinch it in place with your non-tying hand. With a pinch wrap, just lock it in place and make a couple of wraps. Now you can run your thread back slightly, like so, and there your tail is tied in. A pair of scissors, just cut off the excess and clear the tying in point. Run your thread all the way forward to just behind the thread dam and tie in some ribbing. So for the ribbing here I've got UTC. They're brassy size but in a color gold. I tie that to the side of the shank just to get the more mayfly look. The mayflies are tall. If you look at them, they're quite wide, so you try to mimic that width with everything you tie in. Once you reach the base like that, just hook it into your material holder, advance the thread slightly, and now it's time to tie in the peacock herl. For a fly this size, I use 3 peacock herl fibers, and once you have them in your hand, just pinch the tips so that they all align. tie the peacock herl on top of the hook shank and tie them in until you reach the base of the abdomen. Now advance your thread forward and do a half hitch right there. A half hitch is sort of like a quick save. You save all the work that you've done before that. So if your thread breaks, you don't have the risk of all your material coming undone. I then bring on my bobbin rest and I place my thread on my bobbin rest. Now you take the peacock herl in your hand and twist it a couple of times very slightly. Be careful not to break it or over twist it, and then rotate your rotary vise to start wrapping it. Be careful of the hook tip or point. Peacock herl is very fragile, so it tends to break the hook point. Just keep going forward until you reach, I would say, about a fifth or a sixth of the total hook shank length behind the bead. You need to leave a little gap there. Then secure the peacock herl with a couple of thread wraps, and I'm just going to take this bobbin rest out of the way. Secure it and cut off the excess. Now we're going to use the rib to do two things: create segmentation and also protect or give the peacock herl more durability. So the peacock herl was wrapped in the same direction as the thread. So what we're doing is we're wrapping the ribbing in the opposite direction so that it crosses the peacock herl a couple of times. Do about 6 or 7 segmentations. Depends on the length of the hook shank and the thickness of your wire. Another very popular material to finish or to rib the flower with is tinsel or golden tinsel. That was the original material that was used. Now just turn the wire until it breaks off, and you don't have to waste your neat new tying scissors. And now it's time to tie in the hackle. Select a suitable hackle from a cheap cape. You don't have to use your most expensive dry fly hackle right here. This is just a very generic sort of Chinese, or what we call generic hackle. So you can just use that. Just strip the tips off the base, all the fluffy sort of stuff. And I'm just going to trim that section right there till you're left with that. Now I'm going to tie in the hackle, and once it's secure, just cut off the excess, like so. Now take your hackle plier and attach it to the tip of the hackle. With your left hand, just wet your left hand and just stroke back the fibers to one direction. And now wrap the hackle in the same direction as the thread. After each wrap, just pull back the fibers. This is what we call palmering. Just palmer the hackle backwards so that you don't trap it by the next forward wrap, and it also creates or makes sure that the hackles are facing backwards, which is what you want. Now secure the hackle with your thread and cut off. Pull back the hackle and just make a couple of wraps in front of it just to sort of force them backwards. And now what we do is we fold the hackle material down. You can wet your finger as well, and just helps with it. All that we're going to do now is just make a couple of wraps over that hackle, like so. So we don't necessarily want all the hackle material to face downwards. It's fine if there's a couple facing up, but the majority you want facing downwards. And also then you're left with this red collar, which is what you want. It sort of gives that classic royal coachman feeling. Now we're taking yellow turkey bites. The original was actually white. If you've got white, that's good. I just don't have white, but this yellow works perfectly fine. I've fished this fly before in this color and it works very effectively. So I'm taking yellow turkey bites. It's the same material as the tail. I cut off 2 bites from the feather. Now what I do is I cross them over, like so, and I measure the crossing point right there so that the bites end at the beginning of the abdomen. Then I place that crossover point on top of the hook and I hold it in place with my thumb. Now 2 reps, loose reps, and then a hard 3rd rep secures it in place, like so. Now I'll take a very fine pair of scissors and cut off as close to the tying in point as possible. Stroke back any fibers again. I've got 1 or 2 there. Stroke it back and just cover with thread. Now you're basically left with that. That's what you want. Now we're just going to cover all the material, all that excess goose bite, white goose bite, just cover it with your thread. And we do a whip finish with your whip finish tool. You can also use a hand whip finish, whatever you want to do. Just make sure that it is secured properly. Just like so. Now what I like to do is take some Silly Hansons, take it out of the bottle and just place some of it on top of your bodkin and just seal that entire collar area. This will also strengthen the horns or this white turkey bite that you tied in. And there you have it, the completed Prince Nymph. If you found this fly tying tutorial useful, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications so that you can be notified as soon as we release any new content. Until we see each other next time, cheers.